Hey everybody, Josh with Cripple Concepts here. I'm going to compare our chargers to a few of what I consider the biggest competition chargers out there on the market. This has been something a few customers have asked me about, and to be honest, I don't know where we stack up. I can tell you on paper where we stack up, but I never bought another charger from another company, so I'm going to do a comparison. Let me just walk you through what the chargers are going to be, and then I'll talk about each charger individually later in the video. So we got the Power Buddy. This is the OG. This is the first, I think, wheelchair USB charger on the market. It plugs in up high on your chair, hangs down, has a light on the front, switch on the back. So yeah, this is like the original. Different, very different than what we sell, but yeah, this is I think the first on the market. Next, I'll go to what a lot of people buy before they buy a Cripple Concepts charger, then they regret it and they buy a Cripple Concepts charger. And I haven't tested any of these, so I've had them all for about a month. I haven't tested any of them yet. This is the ALV, and I'm just showing you the packaging for now. I'll show you the insides here in a bit. This one's available on a lot of websites. MonsterScooterParts.com is where I bought this one. I think they're about 25-30 bucks. You can't drive your chair with these in, from what I understand, so that's something to note. Next is the Pride Mobility. Pride, the wheelchair company, they have their own charger now. Guessing somebody else actually makes it. Made in China. Actually, if this had been on the market, there's a good chance I wouldn't have made mine, but let's see where it actually compares, because I still think we beat it. Next is, same concept as the Cripple Concepts charger. A 3D printed housing. Guy out of, I believe, Norway makes these. Wheelchair-usb.com. I'll put links to all this stuff below the video. Seems to be a decent little charger. The specs on it are very comparable to ours, so yeah, again, we'll compare and see where it stands. Then of course you have the Cripple Concepts charger. This is the charger we've been selling. Nice little guy, but I'll tell you, as a quad, I get why they're hard to hold. That's been a complaint from several people. That's why we added the silicone band in the middle. Now, as you see, it's dangling from a little string. So I finally came out with a lanyard version. For all those who've been asking, lanyard version, finally out. Well, it'll be out by the time this video is out on the website. And finally, this has kind of been a little side project that I've been working on for a while I've been recovering from some health issues. It's a lot bigger. Of course, still has the Cripple Concepts logo stamped in it. We brand everything. This will be coming out by the 1st of August also, along with the lanyard version. This is a turbocharger for folks that have some of the newer phones that'll use Qualcomm Quick Charge and a couple other protocols. This will charge your phone a lot faster. Again, out of necessity, a friend of mine needed one of these. She used her phone all the time. The other charger wasn't quite keeping up. It would keep it from going down, but it wouldn't charge her battery. Then I bought a phone and fixed it for her. I bought a phone that needed this. So finally got around to building one. Like I said, they're a little bigger, a little clunkier, but that's because the circuit board itself is a lot bigger. It's got to really get rid of a lot of heat with all that power going through it. So that'll be the last charger we compare. So yeah, the video might get a little bit lengthy because I can get into some of the technical things of what these different chargers do, but it's been a request. I know there are a lot of other chargers on the market. I'm aware, but I can't afford them. I can't afford to buy all of them. I have, I think, $220 into these chargers. So, you know, the price adds up quick, and the reality is I'm never going to use these. I've got a great charger that works. So I'm never going to use any of these other than to show where they compare to us. And honestly, I want to know how we compare. Is it worth me still making chargers here? I believe it will be, but, you know, until I test them, I won't know. I got my handy dandy little test rig right over here. Puts out 26 volts because sometimes your chair is a little over 24. I want to make sure everything can handle more than 24 volts. And then I have a little test rig that simulates phones charging, and it will verify what protocols will actually work. So yeah, I'll walk it through all those, talk you through each of the chargers. Like I said, the video might get long. I apologize for that, but I want to highlight the pros and the cons of all these chargers, because I don't believe there's ever one right product for everyone. I know that I like the chargers that Cripple Concepts makes. Somebody might like the Power Buddy better. Somebody might like the Alvi better. Somebody might like the Pride better. And for folks, especially in Europe, you might like wheelchair-usb.com chargers better. So keep watching. We'll walk you through all the chargers. All right, everybody, the verdict is in. I got all 6 chargers tested, and the results were about what I expected. The first thing I'm going to say is every one of these chargers, the total of 6 here, 2 of them are Cripple Concepts chargers. The other ones are all ones I purchased. Every one of them meets the specs that they claim. So I'll just start with that. So if you look at the specs and you understand what the specs mean, which I know not everybody does, and every new phone has new requirements. Believe me, as a guy who's making chargers, it's hard to keep up with what the new phone companies come out with. But they all meet what they say they'll do. So I'm going to walk you through all of them. I'm going to pop up pictures of the tester to show you what all they do and don't do. I kind of lump these into 2 categories. I'm kind of leaning into the camera here because I wanted you to be able to see down here on the table. So this is the group I'll start with, and I'll talk about why I wouldn't recommend anybody waste their money on any of these in 2018 or beyond. These might have been good a few years ago, but I would not recommend them now. And then there's the group over here that I think might be worth spending your money on. So we'll start with kind of the OG charger. This was the first one on the market. This is the Power Buddy. It's huge. I'll start with saying that. But well built. I'll also say that it plugs in on top, it dangles down. There's a switch on the back for the light. There's an LED light built into it, and then the USB port here in the end. There's also this little stupid rubber flap that goes over the USB port, and I get the purpose. It's to keep dust out, but the one thing I want to show here, and it's hard to get an angle that can see this. The USB port in this particular charger, and it's not the only one, but it's really far back in the plastic enclosure. And that's a problem if you have a USB cable that doesn't have a lot of length to the end of it. I had a couple things I tried plugging into this that wouldn't actually go in far enough to make the contacts hit. If you look at the test results here, it doesn't do anything. This puts out 1 amp of power at 5 volts. On a modern smartphone, that's probably not even going to keep it from draining. It's just going to slow down how fast your phone drains. It's not going to actually recharge. That is minimal power. As a matter of fact, you'll see with all 3 of these first chargers that I'm reviewing that I had to have a separate cable plugged into my charger that I was actually running off of one of my Cripple Concepts chargers, because they didn't put up enough power to light the screen on my test device. Like, that's how little power these things put out. So 1 amp at 5 volts. Like I say, if you just need to run a little light, a little fan, or an old flip phone, this will do the job. The top connector can actually rotate. I am interested in how they did that. That's a pretty cool feature. This thing's like $130 though. Would not spend my money on it. And one of the tests I did to all of these was to see if they would outperform what they're rated. So I have a test rig where I can put them in and I can crank up the amperage draw. This one did fine up to 1 amp, and after 1 amp it stopped. That happens with some of the other ones, and I'll talk about that. But with the Power Buddy, it burned something up in here. So that's a $130 boat anchor now. This thing's worthless to me. So might have been a good idea at one time. I think that it's seen its best days, and they either need to upgrade the circuits in here or find a different market for them, and it won't charge modern devices. Next up is the Alvi, and I bought this one off of Monster Scooter Parts. Little smaller, still pretty long, a little over 4 inches long, just touch over 4 inches long. Metal housing on the end, like the Power Buddy had. This guy is rated for, let me make sure I get it right. It doesn't say on here, but it puts out roughly 1 amp also. I think actually a touch under. I don't think I get it quite at an amp. But if you crank up the voltage or the amperage draw, it won't put out anymore, but it doesn't damage anything. Like I say, really big, not horribly made. I actually think it feels like quality in your hand. I like the metal. One of the things is the more power you're putting through a charger, the more heat it creates. So the metal connector actually helps dissipate some of that heat. So that's actually an important thing. These are cheap. They're 25, 30 bucks off of Monster Scooter Parts. The major drawback to this charger, other than it won't charge a modern device because it only puts out 1 amp at 5 volts, is you can't drive your power chair or your scooter while this is plugged in. They connected the number 2 and the number 3 pin in here, which is the ground pin, same as the battery charger you use to charge a chair or scooter overnight, which makes it so you can't drive it. So you cannot charge while you drive. The advantage is you also can't drive this charger into a desk or a wall or something and break it, but you have to be stationary with the switch off oftentimes in order for this to actually work. Again, 30 bucks, 29, 30 bucks, whatever it is, I wouldn't recommend it. Only puts out 1 amp. Like that to me would be a deal breaker unless you use a flip phone. Oh, one other thing I didn't mention on the Power Buddy. This little doodad here goes in the Power Buddy as I drop it on the floor. It looks like a USB thumb drive. And they claim that for some devices, you might need this in order to charge. So you got to add that to the end of your cable. Again, the electronics in the Power Buddy are just antiquated. Next, I'm going to move on to the Pride Mobility Charger. Now, this little guy, I'm not going to lie, it's cute. It's a sexy little beast. If they would have had this back when I built my first charger, I probably would never got into the charger business. Got a nice lanyard. Actually looks exactly like the lanyard we're putting on our new chargers. It's all plastic, which, as I mentioned, the power or the heat dissipation with the metal housing is actually important. It has the same problem as the Power Buddy in that the USB port is way too far back in there. I mean, it is 1/4 inch back in there. A lot of USB cables are not going to actually go all the way in there. Super lightweight. I mean, super lightweight. It's got some nice silk screening on it with all the specs and that. Again, 1 amp at 5 volts. This thing's pretty recent on the market. And it is ridiculous to me that a big wheelchair company like Pride Mobility, and this is my beef with these big corporations. If you notice, all 3 of these, really well made. They spent big money on plastic injection molding, and they look very polished. They look really good. But because they got locked into their design, because they have so much invested into their initial design, they never update it. So you have a 1 amp charger on a, again, it's a $30 charger. These aren't that expensive, but if it doesn't actually charge your modern smartphone, what good is it? So wouldn't recommend that one either. Next, I'm going to move to the wheelchair-USB charger. It's wheelchair-usb.com. The guy's name is Tor. He's out of Norway. Similar design to the Cripple Concepts chargers. Metal housing on this end. They're all silver. He does the silver ones. 3D printed end. Pretty nice quality. He has the 2 pieces of plastic glued together, but they seem to be solid. He offers a lot of different colors. We took the Henry Ford method you can get from Cripple Concepts, black, or black. But he offers a bunch of different colors. Again, does exactly what it claims. This will charge up to 5 volts at 2 amps. If you get it above 2 amps, I tried it at 2.4 and I tried it at 2.1, it gets too hot. And there's a built-in thermal circuit in here, same as ours have actually, and it just kicks off. So it's charging and it's not charging. It's charging and it's not charging. And that's not only annoying, it can actually be really hard on your battery. So I wouldn't use this on any device that pulls more than 2 amps. Phones that say they'll pull 2.1 amps only need that if they're dead. So if you are always kind of topping it off and you're on the top half of your battery, this would probably work just fine. A lot of the iPhones, a lot of the older Android stuff, they use 2.1 amps. And this would probably work just fine. Gets pretty warm while it's running. Not hot, but pretty warm. But if you're over in Europe, especially, the shipping's probably, you know, affordable. And I think it's about $30. The guy was really nice. We communicated back and forth. He knew what I was doing. He knew I was testing him. Another guy with a disability who built it out of need. So this is one I actually would recommend. I'd recommend you try this if you have a pretty basic device and not one of the most latest and greatest cell phones, and especially if you're in Europe where the shipping would make it worth it. So now we talked about the competition, and I'll admit I'm biased. There's a reason I make my chargers. There's a reason I think that the Cripple Concepts chargers are superior to some of these competitors based on the specs. And again, everything that I tested met the specs they publish. Based on the specs, I still say the Cripple Concepts chargers are better. So we'll jump to our standard charger here. This guy's little, almost the same length as the Pride Mobility charger, a lot heavier because it's a metal housing to dissipate the heat. Also holds up a little bit better. Smaller diameter than the Pride Mobility charger. We put our USB port right out to the end. It's barely behind the plastic there. Hopefully that comes out okay on camera. And that's because some devices have a really short end on the USB cable. That to me is really important. If you have some devices that won't work with the charger isn't worth buying. So I think that's a really important piece. These are a little hard to handle if you're a quad like me. That's why we added the lanyard. That's why we added the silicone ring in the middle with our name on it. This will do up to 2.4 amps. Now 2.4 amps, that's going to cover almost all of the latest Android devices. Almost all iPhones. Again, I'm not going to guarantee I can tell you every device is going to have power. If you just go online and search the name of your phone, like the model of your phone, and charging protocol, it'll probably tell you. This one doesn't do quick charge. This doesn't do 9 volts or 12 volts or 20 volts, but it'll do 1.5 volts. It'll do 2.1, 2.4, standard, half amp. And one important thing to note is the other charger only put out 1 amp. Well, with any of these devices, there's a communication between the charger and the phone, and they don't put out more amperage than what the device can handle. So if your phone needs a half of an amp, it will put out a half of an amp. If it needs 2 amps, it'll put out 2 amps. So all these amperage ratings are the most the charger will put out. So my charger here, it'll put out a maximum of 2.4 amps, but it'll also put out 0.5 amps, it'll put out 1 amp, it'll put out 1.5 amps. Whatever the phone is basically requesting is what it will put out. So this, to me, is still the go-to best device for most people. It'll be cheaper than our other charger, probably always. The parts are cheaper, and I build a lot more of them, so I'm still, refining the design on the other ones. I do charge more for these. I brought the prices down a little bit, but quite honestly, I've got to be able to make it worth my effort to make these. Now, they're 3D printed housing on one end. They're not injection molded. I was going to go the injection molding route, but quite honestly, I keep really doing little improvements. I've made the connection better to the metal housing. I've now added the lanyard. You can't do that if you have injection molds. They cost money. They're expensive. Injection molding costs a lot more. You had to make hundreds of thousands of units to justify that cost. And I don't make that many. I'm still working on my garage. Like I'm not a millionaire off wheelchair chargers, I can tell you that. So 2.4 amps works for most devices. Highly recommend this still as the best charger for most people. Now finally, I'm going to go to the new Cripple Concepts turbochargers. Now, these actually remind me a lot of the first chargers I was making 7-8 years ago. They got the plastic housing, they got the metal connector on this end that plugs into the chair, they dangle down. They're quite a bit bigger because of that. not much heavier than our other chargers, but the circuit board itself is a lot bigger. So that's why I can't fit it in a tiny little lipstick sized tube. I need something bigger to house it. Now hopefully eventually we'll get something smaller, but right now this is what it's got to be. The advantage of these is for the newer Android devices, probably some other brand, some other types of smartphones too. If your phone uses what they call a Qualcomm Quick Charge 2.0, 3.0, 1.0, this will do it. If your phone uses a lot of the rapid charging protocols that use higher than 5 volts, this will put out 9 volts, 12 volts, or 5 volts, depending on what the phone requests. And it'll put out the amperage that's appropriate for those voltages. So to give you an example, with my Moto X4, with our standard charger, it'll charge, if I'm not listening to a podcast, if I'm not on the phone, it'll charge in probably 3 hours, maybe 4, from a pretty much dead phone. With this charger, 25, 30 minutes. So much faster. And I made these at the request of several customers who, as I keep showing you the logo upside down, that wanted that latest and greatest. And with that, it's going to come at a price. These are going to be more expensive. But if you have the latest and greatest phone, you want the latest and greatest charger, this guy is going to be the go-to. Again, for most people, I would still recommend the small Cripple Concepts charger. So yeah, that's kind of where they all stack up. I wouldn't not recommend, I'm not just dissing the competition because they're my competition. If they made chargers that were up to date, that were the latest and greatest, I would totally recommend those. There probably are some out there. Hey, manufacturers, you want to send yours and compare to me? Send them to me. I got a couple $100 into chargers here though, just to test to see where we stack up. I can't afford to buy every wheelchair charger on the market. But hey, if somebody wants to test another one, or somebody wants me to test another one, send it my way. Send me an email. Just josh@crippleconcepts.com. Shoot me an email and say, hey, I want you to test my charger. I want you to test this charger. I'll put it to the test. I'll see where they stack up. I'll be honest. If somebody else had a nice, clean, finished product like, I threw it too far. Oh, there it is. The Pride Mobility one. Somebody else made a nice small one like this, but the USB port came all the way to the end and it would turbocharge. I'd quit making chargers and I'd buy theirs. I'd recommend theirs. They're selling in volume. They can sell at a lower price, but they're selling outdated technology. Same with the Power Buddy, same with the Alvi. They're outdated. It's my irritation with the wheelchair industry in general. These are things that are designed most likely by able-bodied people who don't use wheelchairs every day, who have this brilliant idea for how to help the cripples. And then they don't execute it properly. They poorly execute it, and you end up with devices that don't really help us that much. So I hope you appreciated the review. If you have any questions, throw them down below. I'll probably do a table at some point kind of comparing all the outputs of all these chargers, so you can look at it in one table and see what it is. And if you have, like I said, additional questions, throw them down in the comments, shoot me an email. If one of your manufacturers or one of these chargers disagrees with anything I've said, same thing, reach out to me, let me know. Maybe there's something I didn't understand. Maybe the Power Buddy's not really dead. Maybe there's a reset on it. The switch turns the light on and off. That's it. You want a light? We'll throw a light in our kits for you so you have your light for well under the $130 this thing will cost you. So appreciate you watching. I apologize the video got a little bit long, but I want to do a pretty thorough review on all these so you'd understand kind of what the pros and the cons to all these chargers are. Thanks for watching.